Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just dive right into this, shall we? Today, we are completely dismantling that heavy, exhausted burden of shame around failed health routines. Seriously, we're going to look at the actual, scientifically backed mechanics of lasting change. So if you've ever started a new health kick, totally fired up, only to completely run out of gas just a couple of weeks later, take a deep breath. You are absolutely not alone, and today, we're going to fundamentally change how you look at your own habits. So, think about this. Why does Monday's motivation completely disappear by Thursday? Picture this incredibly familiar scenario. You start the week with perfectly portioned meals, highly ambitious gym plans, and you are just riding high on that fresh, new week energy. But by Thursday evening, that bright, shiny motivation has totally worn off. Work deadlines piled up, you've made literally hundreds of tiny decisions all day, and you're just left feeling profoundly, deeply exhausted right down to your bones.
That brings us to Section 1, the willpower myth.
To really understand why that Thursday crash happens, we first have to unlearn a deeply toxic myth. It's this pervasive idea that willpower is some kind of unlimited superpower and that failing to stick to a routine is just a personal moral failure. Listen to me. You are not the problem. Breaking a routine simply means you're living a busy, demanding life. We so often internalize a skipped workout as a failure, when in reality, we just haven't been taught the right strategies to cope when life inevitably gets in the way.
The real culprit here is something called ego depletion. Science actually tells us that willpower operates exactly like the battery on your smartphone. When you politely decline a donut in the break room or force yourself to focus on some massive spreadsheet, you are actively taxing your mental resources. After making hundreds of choices all day long, your mental battery just drains. And when that happens, your brain vigorously shifts away from self-control and violently prioritizes immediate gratification. It's a physiological response, folks, not a lack of character.
And here is where the biology gets truly fascinating. Roughly 20% of the population, that's 1 in 5 people, carries a mutation in the MC4R gene. This mutation actively disrupts the brain's ability to sense fullness. It proves that cravings aren't always a lack of discipline. Sometimes they're a physiological imperative, exactly like thirst. You add in hormonal shifts, sleep deprivation, the gut microbiome, and you quickly see that human biology actively stacks the deck against us. Moving right along to Section 2, Environment over Motivation. The author James Clear hits the nail right on the head when he says, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. When we look at how human habits evolved, even looking way back, centuries, to how agriculture spread faster across similar climates in Europe and Asia than it did in the Americas, it becomes incredibly clear. Over a long period of time, your personal characteristics and grit tend to get completely overpowered by your environment. Because of that, waiting around to magically feel motivated, it's a total trap. Feelings are fleeting, and frankly, your brain is hardwired to keep you comfortable on the couch. But gently engineering an automatic environment where the healthy choice is the absolute default choice, that completely removes the need for heroic willpower. If you place your guitar right in the middle of the living room or make sure your gym is directly on your commute home, you are designing an environment that effortlessly accelerates your success. Want some solid proof? A brilliant study from Brian Wansink over at Cornell University found that people ate 22% less food simply by switching from 12-inch dinner plates to 10-inch plates. That's a massive difference. They completely automated a healthier decision and enforced portion control without expending a single drop of extra mental effort.
Which brings us to Section 3, Identity over Goals.
Okay, so once we fix our physical environment, the next crucial shift is completely rethinking the traditional way we set targets for ourselves mentally. Goal-based habits focus on achieving an immediate, isolated outcome, like, say, losing 10 pounds or running a 5K. They kind of keep you waiting to be happy. Identity-based habits, on the other hand, ask a much deeper question. Who do I want to become? This allows you to adopt the larger, sustainable vision of being a healthy person. You aren't just trying to exercise. You are actively stepping into the identity of an athlete.
And the data backs this up beautifully. In a massive 24-week study of over 36,000 women in a behavioral weight loss program, the numbers showed a clear, undeniable divide. A whopping 40% started out motivated purely by appearance, which is an extrinsic goal. But the remaining 60%, those driven by intrinsic identity shifts like long-term health and fitness, saw significantly lower dropout rates. Intrinsic motivation builds a resilient identity that keeps you going long after that initial excitement just completely fades away.
All right, Section 4, Building Sustainable Systems.
So we know we need a solid environment in an identity-based approach, but how do we practically bridge that massive gap between our good intentions and actually taking daily action? Well, before we can act, we have to overcome what's called activation energy. The absolute hardest part of any task is simply starting. Because your brain is naturally designed to conserve energy, it's going to throw up every bit of hesitation possible to avoid expending that initial burst of effort required to, say, get off the couch and put on your running shoes.
To hack this natural resistance, try a metacognitive starting ritual, like the 5-second rule. It's so simple. First, notice the hesitation. Second, count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And third, physically move at 1. This tiny act actually interrupts your brain's default hesitation loop and shifts you from overthinking directly into action. You just bypass the resistance completely.
Another incredible tool to bridge that intention-action gap is creating if-then implementation intentions. By deciding your specific actions in advance, you put your response to obstacles on total autopilot. You aren't relying on a drained ego to make a smart choice in the moment. Instead of vague promises, you literally say, if I eat chocolate, then I'll buy veggies for dinner. It completely frees up your cognitive resources.
You can also structure this using BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits framework. Pinpoint your outcome, then shrink the action until it feels absolutely silly not to do it, like just putting on your walking shoes or leaving exactly one bite of food on your plate. Stack it onto an existing prompt, like brushing your teeth. And crucially, celebrate immediately. Smile, say, I nailed it, and give yourself that quick dopamine hit to encode the new behavior as a highly rewarding pattern.
Finally, Section 5, the sustained impact. All of these tools we've talked about, the 5-second rule, the implementation intentions, the tiny habits, they're all designed to guide you safely through the messy, unglamorous middle of a journey, which is where real transformation actually lives. I love this rule, standardized before you optimize. Please do not overcomplicate things when you're just starting out. Don't stress about the perfectly scientifically flawless workout protocol or whether your spinach is entirely organic. Just take basic action. Put the foundation in place first, nail the absolute basics, and worry about optimizing those tiny little details much, much later. And when things do go wrong, because hey, life happens and you will absolutely slip up, remember this simple mantra: never miss twice. Dr. Eleanor Bryant calls this flexible willpower. One missed workout or one donut does not ruin a system. What ruins it is the what the hell effect, letting one mistake spiral into abandoning the whole week. So give yourself some grace, stop the spiral, and just steer the ship right on your very next choice. So I want to leave you with this final vital question. What small 2-minute system will you build today? Motivation is inevitably going to fade. Your willpower battery will absolutely drain. Inspiration, it's just the spark, not the fire. But if you engineer your environment and focus on the process instead of the outcome, what tiny, effortless habit can you implement right now to permanently change your identity? Start small. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.